Hello, this is Angelo Stralopa, CEO of Positivity Coaching, and you're listening to my podcast.
Welcome to the Unlock Podcast, an innovative approach to human development. My name is Amanda, and today I am joined by Angelo Derlopas, one of our associate coach here at Unlock. Angelo, can you please introduce yourself very briefly?
Thank you very much, Amanda, for having me. That's right. And I'm an associate with Unlock, so I work a lot with humanitarian organizations and the private sector. Actually, my background was very early on with working for private sector. My academic studies include an MBA and a master's in psychology. For the last 14 years, I am a coach, educator, and a mentor and a supervisor. And I have the NCC credential. I have been accredited by the International Coaching Federation as a master certified coach with an advanced certification in team coaching. And I'm also accredited as supervisor by the European and Mentoring Coaching Council. So thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for letting us invite you and being part of this amazing journey that we're kind of starting. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about learning culture. That's why you're our guest today, because you're a person that has vast experience on what learning culture are, especially within organizations, especially within the corporate sector. So let's just start by that, addressing that question. What is a learning culture?
You're right. And learning culture is very important for the organizations. And the trick about the learning culture is when people think that they have a learning culture, but they somehow keep on resisting. Of course, there are different kind of learnings and different kind of skills, the horizontal and the vertical skills. What we are mainly working on are the skills that include, to say it simply, communication skills, active listening, problem solving, teamwork, everything that can contribute to have people skills. Because when people are managers and leaders on various levels, what they need are the capacity, the understanding of how to handle people, and in many ways that goes through understanding how to handle their own self. So self-awareness is very, very important. Now, there are different approaches about what is important in learning. And if we go back to the theory of the appreciative inquiry, for example, that allow us to make a distinction between what we use to think about what is important about learning, and to put it very simply, because I think that's important for our viewers and listeners, is that there are people who think that the best investment they can do is to educate or train people in things that they don't know, something, or to close a gap, for example, which is not bad per se. But I think it's also very important, and we have found that through the appreciative inquiry, that understanding not just what are the growth opportunities or the development needs, the way that we are calling them today. It's also important to understand which are the strengths of the people in the organization and invest on those strengths, because this is where the organization will have the competitive advantage and build on that. And that's, in brief, that's what it means to make good use of the resources of the organization, to invest in the right people and retain the talents in the organization, invest more in them. However, if you want to look at what recent researches and theories have shown us, and I'm naming Professor Carol Dweck and her mindset theory, which talks about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. It's not just about people, it's also about the organization, about the environment, the working environment. What do the people in the workplace, and when I say people, I mean the leaders, the managers, what is the culture that they are having or allowing or enabling? Is it a culture that allows people to have a fixed mindset, which means that there's a limited number of things that a person can do or learn, or there's a limit to where that person can grow, or is it unlimited? Now, the growth mindset shows us that if the right environment is in place, if the right people can model the growth mindset, if they can inspire the growth mindset, then people will feel it's natural and organic to always strive to learn more and to become better, to become more and learn more things and outgrow themselves and become always better, being the forever seeker, let's say. And that allows for a lot of learning opportunities. And learning can come from both the training, as we know it traditionally, what everyone can think about what the training is, but also about coaching, which is in a lot of instances, and we have the experience in Unlock as well. We complement training with coaching. And I think for a good reason, because it has been proven that the value of training is being increased by a great percentage if coaching will be applied at some point of this trajectory. And it makes sense if you think about let's say the trainee or the coachee, the client in general, will understand what are his or hers individual obstacles, what he needs to overcome, what to do differently, and what particularly they need to do in particular in their workplace, working with specific issues, challenges, people, and departments, and so on. So it's more also about customizing, but it's, on the other hand, Amanda, what is even more important is that it creates that space safe for reflection to understand how people can grow, in which direction they should develop themselves and their people, so they can become better in what they're doing and make good use of all the learning that's been provided. Now, I don't know how much time do we have, because I know time flies.
I have more questions. That's the thing. But from everything that you said, which was so gracious, I'm kind of connecting this to an episode that we did a couple of months ago, where we addressed psychological safety. So one of the things that you mentioned, for you to be able to, enable a workplace where people feel comfortable, enabling this culture, where you feel like you can go to someone, you can speak up, you can have certain behaviors. It means that the place, like, in order to enable a proper or a higher learning culture, you have to enable as well a psychological safety place in the first place.
Yes, that's one of the themes that we are working on, especially when we are working with leaders, creating an environment that creates psychological safety, so people can trust that they can speak up and be heard and share genuinely, and sometimes challenge ideas for the sake of creating or co-creating new and better ideas, so that we can have the best teamwork that it's possible, and that so that people will not be afraid to try out new things. And yes, that's right. Psychological safety is one of the things. The growth mindset is also very, very important. Conscious leadership. There are so many things that are very, very important. And, I was thinking about 10 years ago, if someone would come to the workplace and said, you are not being vulnerable enough. If that had happened 10 years ago, then everybody would have looked as if that person is not in the right place. 10 years ago, vulnerability was considered as a weakness, as a sin, as something to be blamed of. But now it's even been, people consider that even in appraisals, that you have to be vulnerable enough in order to allow learning to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually the best take there. That you have to allow yourself to be as vulnerable as possible and able to be, capable to embody this learning culture that you're trying to promote as well. So what are, or what examples can you give me of like traditional corporate learning culture environments?
I remember an example that was shared by Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella in a conference by Swift organization, and he was explaining how he implemented Carl Dweck's theory in Microsoft, and I think that this is a great example coming from a big corporation, but it shows the difference in culture. And I remember that Satya Nadella said a lot of things in that interview. But what I want to bring here in this podcast is that at some point he expressed that in his managers, and he explained the value of the growth mindset, and some of his managers at some point came back to him and said, Satya, we have found which are the ones that have fixed mindset, like finger pointing. And he said back to them, that's not the way to go forward. Now, these are my words, of course, but he meant that that's not the issue here. It's not about finding who among us or among the people here in the organization have fixed mindsets. It's about enabling everybody to move to a growth mindset. Yeah. So the responsibility lies between us.
Yeah, that's such a good takeaway, because indeed you have to be aligned in order to promote, a same culture within an ecosystem. So how would you, more certainly, so how would you disrupt years of like perpetuating the same learning culture? Like if you're doing like a new client, let's say, like kind of like a case study question, this related, right? So how could you disrupt like years of perpetuating the same learning culture? What are your steps or approaches that you would take?
Well, one way to challenge that is talk to the person who is making the decisions and says, okay, so we always take it for granted, and I think it makes sense that every organization has finite resources. So what's the best way to make good use of the resources that you have available? Would you put your money and your hours into people just for fixing, let's say, the holes, or do you want to invest that in people that you believe, or in the parts of the people in that in the strengths that people have, rather than the weaknesses? So I think that's a game changer. And if you ask that question, the person in charge, I think they have to make a tough call. But I think it's it's a good one that will lead the organization forward.
Yeah, because in a sense, you're also making them responsible for the change that they want to enable. So once they're conscious, like you were mentioning, self-awareness is very important in order to promote a cohesive learning culture. So making them aware, or making them, write down whatever's wrong or whatever needs to work better for the company or for the organization is the way to move forward. So in that sense, you need some alignment, and you need also the compromise from the head of the program. Let's call them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So how can you, both as a leader and as a team member, how could you be a better like team member in the sense of like promoting a learning culture when you're like undergoing the change, let's say?
Modeling, being leading is about modeling the what's the right behavior, what's the right attitude. I remember, now this is my personal experience. I remember at some point I was coaching a number of leaders in a big organization, and of course there was a schedule. But however, the CEO learned that I was there, and he asked to meet me, and he wanted a session with me. And I think that's a great example showing exactly that. I think that kind of leader, that kind of CEO was inspiring everybody else. It's like giving permission to do that. When for those who might be hesitant, he was kind of giving permission. I did not ask that. I did not ask for that, but he wanted to do that. And that was great.
Yeah, that is great indeed. It's like there's a quote that I really enjoy, which is to lead by being, just don't be like leading people and just follow me and do as I say, but do as they should be doing, and then they will follow, because they feel like if you trust this, they will trust you. They already put their trust on you. So that's a way that they can feel inspired and feel, like motivated and compromise, in the sense that, if he did it or she did it, if they did it, I can do it as well. And I should be doing it, because why not?
Mm-hmm.
So
you put it perfectly.
Yeah.
I couldn't say it better.
Well, I'm glad I could add something there, because this has just been great. So would you like to add some experience that you would have related to learning culture within organizations? Personal or not, just some experience that you could share that's relevant to what we are discussing here today.
Well, apart from that example that came from my experience, and the other one from Microsoft that came from some other experience, I think there are things that are happening all the time. When we're working with leaders, there are things that are happening all the time. And I can see that there are people who are so, some of them are so inspired to work for their own personal change. And so, for example, I cannot disclose the organization, but for example, and it was a very senior person, last week, somebody said, okay, so drill me. And he wanted me to ask all the hard questions, be challenging, being very deeply reflective, and even heretic, if that is allowed, to ask all the questions that he didn't have the opportunity, the time, the place, the safety to consider and ask, and answer, and being asked and answer. And I think that's great. People like that, or people, for example, I remember another example of a person who was also very senior. A few months ago, he was coming so well prepared for our conversations. He really was doing, all his, let's say, homework and more. And he was so intentional and determined. And I think intentionality is very important in the work that we do. People will get the best outcome from their efforts if they are intentional in what they are doing, and we are there to partner with them, of course.
That is really, really insightful. Like the actual commitment to act on what you think and what you say, and how you portray a situation is actually, it takes some courage. So I really, really feel honored to have you here and to have you share these experiences that are both personal and other experiences as well, from senior leaders that feel either confident or don't feel confident, to address some situations. And then you create that safe space for them to also, enable them to have that conversation that will be tough at the beginning, but I mean, it's the only way to go over it is through it, right? So it's kind of how to address the conversation. So thank you very much for all this. Would you like to share something additional with our listeners?
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm grateful for this. I think what's most important for our listeners is to remember that the intention is very important, and to have as clear goal as it can be, realistically speaking. But I think personal, professional development is very, very important. So there are always new horizons to reach, and the belief, I think they should have a strong belief that this is doable. They can do that. Training and coaching is the way to go forward if they have the intention, and they will find the time, and they will do it for sure.
Well, thank you so much for kind of summarizing everything that we just talked about today. So important words, self-awareness, growth mindset, commitment, leading by example would be another good phrase there. But thank you so much for your time, Angelos. I really appreciate you taking your time to, educate us a little bit on this topic that actually affects every single organization.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. So if you want more information, you can always find us at unlock.org, unloq.org. And to our listeners and watchers, viewers, sorry. Thank you for listening, for tuning in, and stay tuned as we continue to unlock human potential.
This is Angelos Trolopas, and you can listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Google.